If you're interested in a deep dive and you want to know more about what happened in the Sarasota real estate market in 2025, this is the video for you. Hi, it's Drew. I'm back with my Russell recap, and this is the year-end 2025 edition. We're going to talk about what we saw last year and now what we're looking forward to in 2026. So before I get into my deep dive, I would just like to start talking from a place of gratitude and tell you what we did in our practice this year. And honestly, the start of 2025 was a rough time. People don't like to talk about it, but we were still very much recovering from a historic hurricane season and kind of trying to find our footing amidst the election and all the things you've heard me talk about here. So with that, we were able to really rally. We have over $45 million in sold and pending listings for 2025. We helped over 35 families. We had an average sale price of $1.1 million. And with those achievements, that put us at number 43 in the Sarasota and Manatee County Board of Realtors out of over 9,000 licensed agents in our area. And that put us in the top 10 for Michael Saunders and Company, which also is a really great achievement that I'm proud of as well. So we really were able to deliver results, but mostly grateful for our clients that allowed us the opportunity to do so. So now with that, let's get into the actual statistics of what happened in 2025. And if you made it this far in the video, I think that you're interested in what I have to say. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not gonna try to make it an overly glossy situation. I don't have my rose-colored glasses on. And so with that, I will tell you that the last 3 years, starting in 2023, 24, and then 25, have been harder markets for us, right? We've had just massive shifts for a variety of reasons that if you want to know what those are, you can go back and watch the prior videos. I've talked about all the reasons for that in depth. But really the end of this cycle, I feel like we were able to look back and see, okay, what happened? And the really big thing, and if you kind of look at this slide, you can see, look in the very middle of this chart, you can see there's basically a huge dip, and that dip shows a decrease in inventory. The dark green lines show a big rise in sales, and the red line shows kind of pendings. And you can see kind of that red line stays constant over the past 10 years. The amount of sales are fairly similar across the board over the last decade, but the amount of opportunities for buyers to buy has changed so much. And when you look at this dip in the middle of the market where we had almost no inventory, where everything was selling for over list price, we had rapid price expansion, that was really kind of an artificial market, right? And so looking back at it, we can say, man, what happened after COVID, that was a result of a confluence of so many world events. It was a confluence of monetary policy where, the Fed was pumping money into the economy, lowering interest rates at a massive rate, and it just caused a total frenzy. And the reason for doing that is I think they were worried that the economy was going to collapse due to the pandemic. So again, 3 years in the rearview mirror, now we're looking back and saying what the Fed did after that was realize things were getting overheated too fast, too quickly, and they basically threw a wet blanket on our market. So they rose rates the fastest they've ever risen them, right? So we went from mortgages in the 2% range to mortgages in the 7% range within almost a year. It was crazy. And so buying power diminished, sales slowed, and basically what you're seeing is just kind of the reversing of course of what happened. And the way that we're having success talking to our clients and understanding what happened is saying, you have to look at what happened during 2021 and 2022 and part of 2023 as an artificial market. It happened, but it wasn't exactly real because there were outside forces that were manipulating the market to try to prop up the US economy. Now with those forces absent or even changed, as a seller or a buyer of real estate in the Sarasota, Bradenton market, how are we going to look at those information points and make decisions going forward? So let's go ahead and look at this second slide. And what this wavy green line refers to is the median sale price looking back over a decade. And it's not going to be surprising to you. And this, by the way, these data samples that I'm taking are for my market area, which I custom selected. It includes part of Manatee County from Anna Maria Island down to like Osprey and then out east to 75. So kind of northern Sarasota County, southern Manatee County area, just so you're aware of that. But what you can see is obviously a huge pricing spike in kind of the end of 22, beginning of 23. And then you can see that prices have kind of come down a bit. I would say on average, any listing that was purchased in the boom time has probably come down somewhere between 10 and 15% in price. And that's not popular to say, but that is just an absolute reality of the situation. And if we look then at the next slide, we can see the months of inventory in this same market area. Same thing, look at the dip in the middle. That's an artificial decrease in product available due to monetary policy. And if you look at kind of where the months of inventory are now versus where it was before the pandemic, you can basically see that we're hovering right around 6 months. We've gone above it. We've gone a little bit below it recently, but that is kind of where inventory was pre-pandemic. So the way that I would just put a bow on 2025 is this. I would say 2025 was like an awkward middle school dance. It was like the boys were over here, the girls were over here, and nobody was really sure who was going to make the first move. And I thought that's kind of how buyers and sellers were. Usually in a strong seller's market or super strong buyer's market, we know who's completely in charge. We know how the deal is going to go. And I found like every deal that I was working on was completely different. Some deals the buyer was more motivated, some deals the seller was more motivated, but there's really no playbook for this because it's a re-equalization of a normal standard market in our area. And so what I see going forward is all the statistics that I looked at in preparation for this video show that what our market is returning to is basically kind of a market like we had in 2018 and 2019. And again, if you erase the recent history, those were phenomenal markets. Like those were great markets. They were stable, they weren't overheated. You had to work hard to sell property. You didn't have lines of buyers out front, but there's good demand. We still have good fundamental demand in our market. We're still working out exactly the pricing, but I think we've kind of hit, kind of where pricing is going to be established going forward into this season. So I think that the awkwardness of that middle school dance is starting to become a little less so, and people are starting a little bit to come together a little bit more and realize how we're going to do this dance. So that kind of summarizes 2025 and what we saw. And again, 2025 was a harder market, but it was a great market still. A lot of great sales happening, a lot of interest in this area. And you have to remember that Sarasota is still growing. Our population it's about 15% higher now than it was pre-pandemic, and obviously quite a bit of development going on everywhere. So let's shift gears and let's talk about 2026. That's what people want to know. What do I think we're going to see? Well, definitely some bright spots that we can focus on. I think the first big bright spot is we're starting to see some finality of the effects of the new condo legislation that we saw go into effect. We're seeing condo fees go up, but they're being adjusted more to the actual cost of owning the condo and fully funding reserves so that there's less surprises for buyers. So that translates to a more transparent picture, which I think was the point of the law. And it allows buyers of condos to feel more confident. Now, there's still some condo associations that don't have their act together. That's a whole nother issue, but overall, there's more transparency in the condo buying process, and I think that that's a good thing, and I think that's something that has kind of sorted itself out a bit over the last couple of years. Another thing that I'm seeing, personally and for clients is that insurance rates are stabilizing a little bit more. They had gone pretty much straight up, and you have to search around a bit, but I've actually, personally on my home, I've had decreases the last 2 policy years, which is surprising, I think, but I think that market is stabilizing somewhat. And there was a worry, after the storms a couple of years ago that there wouldn't be the availability of good insurance on some properties, and that's just really not the case. So insurance market's stabilizing, condo market's stabilizing. Another thing that's stabilizing is interest rates, and I think that's been a big thing going into 23, 24, and 25. Everybody's so focused on, hey, I think rates, they went up, I think they're gonna come down, and we're gonna wait and postpone a purchase. And so let me just break it to you straight. Look at this slide. Projections from pretty much everybody are that mortgage rates are gonna be a big fat nothing burger. in 26. They are not projected to change very much. If anything, they have slight downward pressure, but it would be hard to postpone a purchasing decision based on the belief that rates are going to change. And when I got into this market almost 21 years ago, this is exactly where rates were, 6%. And I think you're going to continue to see rates in the high fives and low sixes pretty much the rest of this year, obviously, unless something changes, and we'll be able to unpack that 12 months from now and see how that prediction held up. But rates are off the table. Insurance is less of a challenge. And I think another thing that we can look at is that we're starting to see a bit of pricing clarity. So as prices start going down, there starts to get to a point where things start to catch. And I'm starting to see in different neighborhoods and different buildings, multiple comparable sales that would indicate, hey, this is kind of where the adjusted pricing floor is, and if those prices hold, we'll start seeing things kind of either go up from there or just stabilize from the newer comps, because we're starting to see more market activity towards the end of 2025. Another thing that I think you will see in 2026, and this is a slide from Lawrence Yun, who's the chief economist of the National Association of Realtors. He's referring to 2026 when he says this. He says, next year is really the year that we'll see a measurable increase in sales. And that is great news. And of course, he's looking nationally, but we really haven't seen a surge in the number of sales over the past 3 years. It's kind of been stable. You have some months that are up, some that are down. But what you're seeing as some of these variables are taken off the table, again, no elections this year that we're overly concerned about, no fear of rates changing. It's just a more stable environment overall. And what you're seeing is that dance, it's like the buyers and sellers are moving together just a little bit more as time's going on. And so we see a more comfortable, stable environment going into 2026. And I'm excited. I think, Sarasota overall, the area has a lot of exciting new opportunities in the market that I think are good. And again, you're seeing older communities be revitalized. You're just seeing a lot of positive trends in the area overall. So overall, I'm optimistic about 2026. I think hopefully we've kind of corrected a lot of the issues that were created from the artificial unicorn market. And I look forward to this selling season. If you have any questions about this video, disagree with what I say in this video, or just want to talk more about real estate facts, charts, and graphs, I would be down. So you can reach out to me. I hope you've enjoyed this information, and we'll be back to you next quarter for the next installment of the Russell Recap.